657 Boulevard was like any normal house in any normal neighbourhood, but when the Broaddus family moved in, they began receiving strange letters from an old owner who had devoted their life to watching the house and any new occupants that came along with it. What was meant to be the start of a new exciting chapter for the Broaddus family turned into a complete nightmare. Today we're going to be talking about the mystery of the Watcher at 657 Boulevard. In June 2014, the Broaddus family, who was made up of Father Derek, Mother Maria and their 3 children, purchased a brand new home in Westfield, New Jersey. Westfield is known to be one of the safest suburbs in the whole state of New Jersey, so the parents thought that it would be a great area to buy in because it would be safe for them and their kids. So the family found this house. It was very classic, it had lots of character, and the house was not small by any means. It had 6 bedrooms, and they bought the house for $1.3 million. So all seems well for the Broaddus family. They've just bought their dream home for $1.3 million, which means they must have been doing pretty well in life, and they were about to move in, but soon after they were definitely not in a rush to move in because some strange things began to happen. June 2nd, so even before the family had moved in, they began receiving some pretty strange letters in the mail. These letters had come from someone that they didn't know, but the writer seemed to know them. Somehow this person knew who they were and that they'd bought this house even before they'd moved in. On November 29th in 1990 is when the previous owners had bought the house. Fast forwarding to May of 2014 is when they lived there, so just before the Broaddus family. And they had actually received a letter of their own. And again, they didn't know who the letter was from, except that it was from a family member of an old owner of the house, and they'd been designated to watch the house. So basically, a family had bought this house a long time ago, and they ended up losing ownership of the house, and ever since they'd just been watching the house and any new owners of the property. The family who lived there before the Broaddus family had received the letter pretty soon before they had sold it, and when they sold the house to the Broaddus family, they did not disclose any information about these letters. This is just my own personal opinion, but I think that they hid the fact that they received these threatening letters in the mail intentionally. They probably thought that if they told any potential new buyers about the letters, that it might influence them and influence their decisions on buying the home, so they just decided to keep it quiet. When the Broaddus family came and viewed the house, they practically fell in love with it. They thought it would be the perfect place to raise their children. And I wonder, had they have known about the letters, would they have thought twice about buying the house? It actually took the old owners a long time to admit that they'd received a letter, so the Broaddus family didn't find out this for a good long while. And when the owners were confronted by the Broaddus family about this letter, they said that they didn't think it was brutal or threatening enough to even mention, so they just kept it to themselves. Which again, I think they did to protect the sale of the house and prevent anyone from backing out of the sale. And rightly so, the Broaddus family were very upset and angry with the old owners, so they decided to file a lawsuit against them for not disclosing this important information to them. So back to the timeline, the Broaddus family have moved into the house, still not knowing about any creepy letters from the Watcher. On June 5th, which is only 3 days after they had moved in, the Broaddus family began receiving letters of their own. This first letter said, quote, "Dearest new neighbour of 657 Boulevard, allow me to welcome you to the neighbourhood. 657 Boulevard has been the subject of my family for decades now, and as it approaches the 110th birthday, I have been put in charge of watching and waiting for its second coming. My grandfather watched the house in the 1920s, and my father watched in the 1960s. It is now my time. Do you know the history of the house? Do you know what lies within the walls of 657 Boulevard? Why are you here? I will find out. I see already that you have flooded 657 Boulevard with contractors so that you can destroy the house as it is supposed to be. Bad move. You don't want to make 657 Boulevard unhappy. Signed, The Watcher. So the Broaddus family were alarmed to say the least. So they now know that a family has owned this house and were now lurking around just watching, which is very eerie to say the least. This letter scared the Broaddus family so much that they decided against moving into 657 Boulevard. They wanted to figure out what was going on with these letters, who it was from, whether it was just a messed up prank, and then they would move into the house. On June 18th, they received another 2 letters, and the first letter said, quote, "Have you found what is in the wall yet? In time they will. I am pleased to know your names and the names of the young blood you have brought me. Will the young blood play in the basement? Who has the bedroom facing the street? I'll know as soon as you move in. It will help me to know who is in which bedroom so I can plan better." And in this second letter, it talked about how all the doors and the windows in the house were watching and monitoring them. And if the Broaddus family were not freaked out before, they definitely were now. At this point, they didn't even want to move in anymore. They didn't want the house, they just wanted to sell it. Now, they knew that this was going to be a bit difficult. On February 1st, the house was put up for sale at $1.49 million. And over the months, the price dropped multiple times. First to $1.35 million, and then down again to $1.25 million. And they were having a lot of trouble trying to sell the house, and I'm not surprised because they were trying to sell the house for a lot more than they had bought it for. They bought the house for $1.3 million and were trying to sell it for an extra $200,000. Eventually, after a while of no luck, they pulled the house off the market and just decided that they would rent it out to different people. A family actually did start to rent the house from the Broaddus family, and they seemed to not have been affected by any of these letters. 3 weeks after this family had moved in, there was already another Watcher letter sent. However, the content of this letter has never been released to the public because it was so threatening and really quite graphic, so it was never released, but it contained more directed threats. In June of 2015, a report was released saying that investigators had tested the letters for DNA. And from this DNA, they had found that the writer of the Watcher letters was actually a woman, and that it had been confirmed to be postmarked from Kearney, which is a town about 20 miles away from Westfield, New Jersey. This was helpful to know, however, it didn't really help in getting closer to finding out who had sent the letters, because yes, it was sent from Kearney, but that doesn't mean it was written in Kearney. An FBI profiler examined the letters and determined that the letters were written by someone who was quite a bit older, which is, again, not very helpful at all. In 2016, the Broaddus family tried to get permission from the city to be able to knock down the house and put 2 new houses on the land. However, this request was denied. And in the last letter, it told them that they should not go through with their plans to knock down 657 Boulevard. So the writer must have had some inside knowledge, because how else would they have known about their plans? So now we're going to talk about some theories. The first theory is that the letters were written by the Broaddus family themselves because they wanted out of the house. They regretted the purchase of the home and made up this elaborate story to be able to get out of it, which makes absolutely no sense. It seemed that the Broaddus family were pretty excited to move into 657 Boulevard and were pretty disappointed that it hadn't worked out for them. I think that it's pretty far-fetched to assume that they threw all the time and money into the house, which they loved, to just try and get out of the sale by writing these letters threatening themselves. And I don't think that writing these letters would benefit them in any way. It's not like they were just going to get given their money back. That's not how house sales work. And to further add to this, people believe that the Broaddus family did this so that they could sue the previous owners, but that would mean that they would have had to start writing the letters before they'd even seen the house and moved in, because the other family had received that letter, and that just doesn't make a whole lot of sense. And then the second theory goes along with what we've been talking about, that a family member of an old owner is involved and the family has an obsession with the house and that they were just watching. It was recorded that many years before this, that the house had been sold for $1 and then this person resold the house again for $1, which I thought was a bit odd, but apparently this is a natural thing. If you can't afford your house, the payments, you can sell it to someone for $1 and then they can hold it for you and then you can rebuy it again for $1. And maybe this family were passing the house around throughout the family, or they somehow lost ownership of the house and were now just watching it to see what happened. Another theory is that the letters were written by another person who was interested in buying the house, but the Broaddus family beat them to it, and they were trying to scare the Broaddus family so that they could have the house for themselves. But again, that makes no sense, seeing that the letters were sent to the owners before the Broaddus family were even involved. It is also believed that this might have just been one big prank. These letters were written by someone who wanted to mess with the family. And the letters were creepy because they were talking about young blood, referring to the Broaddus children, and talking about things being hidden in the walls. And because nothing else happened other than just letters, it was very low in terms of priority for the police, because there are actual crimes going on that aren't just weird letters. Police have never figured out who has sent the letters, so to this day it's just creepy how the writer alluded to something being in the walls. This case could probably be a lot more creepy. Like, there could be bodies hidden in the walls. No one actually knows. So I want to hear your thoughts in the comments down below, because I have no idea, so I want to hear your opinions. If you've enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe. Leave a comment down below, and I will see you next week for a brand new video. Bye.